This is Max and Mia podcast.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. You're listening to the Max and Mia podcast, your go-to place to level up your English in a way that actually feels real.
That's right. And if you're joining us for the very first time, we're so glad you found us. Stick around. I promise you won't regret it.
And today's episode, it's a good one.
Okay, but before we jump in, I have to ask you something, Mia. Be honest. Do you ever get to a situation where you know what you want to say in English, but the words just vanish? Like, they're gone. Your mind's completely blank.
Oh, every single time. And it's always in the worst moments, right? Like when someone asks you something super simple and suddenly you forget how to be a human being.
Exactly. And it's not because you don't know English, it's just you haven't practiced that specific situation enough.
Which is honestly why I love what we're doing today.
Same. And I think a lot of our listeners are going to feel very seen after this episode.
So here's what we've got for you today. We're walking through 3 everyday scenarios, the kind of situations you'll actually run into in real life.
And the whole point is that by the end of this episode, you'll have real vocabulary, natural expressions, the kind of stuff that makes you sound more confident and fluent when it counts.
We're talking about conversations at work, out in public, social situations, things like that. Moments where knowing the right phrase can make a huge difference.
So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get into it. All right, let's kick things off with our first scenario. And this one, I feel like everyone has an opinion on this.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those topics that always gets people fired up.
So picture this. 2 friends, Alan and Lucia, are just hanging out. And somehow the conversation turns into a full-on debate about money and happiness. You know the classic question.
Can money actually buy happiness? Or is that just something people say to feel better about not having enough of it?
Exactly. Now, what we want you to do while you listen is pay close attention to how they argue their points. Not just what they're saying, but the words and phrases they use to agree, disagree, give examples, push back.
And if you come across a word or expression you don't know, don't panic. Try to figure out what it means from the context first. That's a skill in itself. And it's one worth building.
Okay, here we go. This is Alan and Lucia.
Okay, so I saw this thing online the other day, and it said that after a certain income, more money doesn't really make you happier. Like there's apparently a number.
Yeah, I've heard that too, but I don't know. I feel like that's easy to say when you already have enough, you know?
Fair point. But the study was pretty solid. The idea is that once your basic needs are covered, your salary stops having such a big impact on how happy you feel day to day.
I mean, I get where they're coming from, but I think that completely overlooks the stress that comes with not having money. Like, you can't just choose happiness when you're worried about rent.
No, you're right about that. I'm not disagreeing. I think financial stability is huge. But there's a difference between having enough and chasing more, right? Because a lot of people who have a lot of money are still miserable.
Okay, yes, but are they miserable because of the money or despite it? Because I'd rather figure that out from a yacht than from my apartment.
Okay, that's fair. But honestly, think about it. How many times have you bought something, felt great for like 2 days, and then nothing? That initial rush just fades out.
Sure, but that's not the same as having financial freedom. Like the ability to say no to a job you hate or take a trip without stressing over every single expense. That's not just a rush, that's quality of life.
I can't really argue with that. I guess what I'm trying to get at is that money is a tool, not a destination. People treat it like the goal, but if you get there and you haven't sorted out what actually makes you happy,
You end up rich and empty. Yeah, I've seen that.
exactly. So it's not really about whether money can buy happiness. It's about whether you actually know what makes you happy in the first place.
Okay, that's actually a really good point. I'll give you that. But I still think the conversation changes completely depending on how much money we're talking about, because we're not all starting from the same place.
Oh, 100%. Privilege is real. And I think that's something people tend to brush off when they say money doesn't matter.
Right, because it's a very comfortable thing to say when you're not struggling.
Yeah. So I guess we both kind of agree. Money matters, but it's not the whole picture.
Basically, money doesn't guarantee happiness, but it definitely makes certain kinds of unhappiness a lot less likely.
I'll take that. That's probably the most honest thing either of us has said today.
Okay, I loved that. Lucia's line about figuring it out from a yacht. I mean, she's not wrong.
That was the moment for me, too. But honestly, what I thought was really interesting is that they didn't just go back and forth throwing opinions at each other. They actually listened. You could hear them shift.
Yeah, Alan started with this kind of the science says argument. And by the end, he was basically agreeing with Lucia's point about privilege. That's what a real conversation looks like.
Exactly. Now let's break it down.
So the first thing I want to highlight is the phrase, I get where you're coming from. Alan uses it when he wants to acknowledge Lucia's point before pushing back. This is huge in English because it keeps the conversation respectful. You're basically saying, I understand your perspective, but...
Right. And it's way more natural than just saying, I understand. It sounds like something a real person would say. So, if you're ever in a debate or even just a disagreement, try it out. I get where you're coming from, but...
The next one I loved. Fair point, 2 words, incredibly useful. When someone says something you can't really argue with, instead of just going silent or changing the subject, you say fair point, and it shows you're actually engaging.
It also buys you a second to think. Which, let's be honest, we all need sometimes.
100%. And speaking of 100%, that's another one worth noting. It's just a strong way of saying absolutely, or I completely agree. Very common in casual conversation, and it sounds natural at any level.
Now let's talk phrasal verbs, because there were a few good ones in there. Brush off. Alan says people tend to brush off the idea of privilege. To brush something off means to dismiss it, to treat it like it's not important when maybe it is.
And then there's fade out, which Alan uses to describe that feeling after buying something new. That initial excitement just fades out. It disappears gradually. You can use this one in a lot of contexts, not just shopping.
And end up. Lucia says, you end up rich and empty. To end up somewhere or in some situation means that's the result. That's where you land after a series of decisions or events. I ended up staying home. She ended up getting the job. Super versatile.
Okay, that was a strong first scenario. But I'm going to be honest with you, the next one, it might hit even closer to home.
All right, so to recap, I get where you're coming from. Fair point, 100%, brush off, fade out, end up, and I'll give you that. Write those down, use them, make them yours.
And everyone in the comments is like, yeah, but also you knew the right people.
Exactly. So the question on the table is, does success come from hard work Or is it really about being in the right place at the right time?
And look, before you pick a side, I want you to really listen to how this conversation plays out. Because I think most people go into this topic thinking it's obvious, and then they hear the other argument, and suddenly it's not so obvious.
That's what I love about it. There's no clean answer, and that actually makes it more interesting to argue. You'll hear both sides defend their position pretty strongly, and there are some moments where things get a little heated.
But in a good way. The kind of heated where you're actually thinking, not just reacting.
So pay attention to how they handle disagreement, how they support their arguments with examples, and how the tone shifts throughout the conversation. There's a lot to pick up on, linguistically speaking.
This one's got some great vocabulary too. Stuff you'd actually use if you were talking about work, ambition, opportunity. Very real world.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so I was reading about this guy the other day. Self-made millionaire. Started from nothing. Whole story. And at the end of the interview, he goes, "I just never gave up." And I'm sitting there like, that's it? That's the secret?
Right. Because clearly no one else has ever not given up and still gone nowhere.
Exactly. And look, I'm not saying hard work doesn't matter. Obviously it does. But I think we really underestimate how much luck plays into it.
I hear you, but I'd push back on that a little. I think luck is often just preparation meeting opportunity. Like, yeah, maybe you happened to be in the right room, but if you weren't ready when that door opened, nothing would have happened anyway.
Okay, but who gets into the room in the first place? That's not always about preparation. Sometimes it's about who your parents know, where you grew up, what school you went to.
I mean, sure, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that background doesn't give some people a head start. That'd be naive. But I've also seen people come from very little and make it work. So I don't think background is destiny.
Neither do I. I'm not saying it's impossible without luck. I'm saying the same level of effort produces very different results depending on your circumstances. Two people grind equally hard and one of them catches a break and the other doesn't. That's not a reflection of who worked harder.
Okay, that's fair. But here's the thing. If you spend too much energy thinking about what's outside your control, you end up paralyzed. At some point, you have to bet on yourself.
I totally agree with that, but I think there's a difference between betting on yourself and telling people that failure is just a lack of effort, because that puts all the blame on the individual and it lets the system completely off the hook.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I think where I land is hard work is necessary but not sufficient. You need both. Effort gets you to the starting line, but opportunity determines how far the race actually goes.
That's a really good way to put it. I think the problem is society loves a clean narrative. He worked hard and made it. It's a better story than he worked hard, got lucky twice, had a good mentor, and the timing was right.
Not exactly a bumper sticker.
No, but probably more honest.
Agreed. I guess the takeaway is work hard, but don't beat yourself up if things don't pan out. Sometimes the variables just aren't in your favor.
And maybe stop acting like every successful person is some kind of self-made superhero.
Okay, now I fully agree with you.
Okay, Sophie's line about hard work getting you to the starting line, but opportunity determining how far the race goes. That's genuinely one of the best ways I've heard that argument put.
It really is. And what I appreciated is that neither of them was just being stubborn. They were actually building on each other's points. Jake starts with this frustration about the never give up narrative, and by the end, they've both moved somewhere more nuanced.
That's real conversation. All right, let's get into the language.
First one. I'd push back on that. This is a really useful phrase for disagreeing without being aggressive. You're not saying, you're wrong. You're saying, I want to challenge that a little. It keeps the tone respectful while still being direct.
And it's very common in professional settings too. Meetings, presentations, discussions at work. If you want to sound confident and polished in English, I'd push back on that is a great tool.
Next, head start. Sophie says some people get a head start because of their background. A head start means an advantage you have before things even begin. Before the race starts, you're already ahead. Very visual phrase, easy to remember.
Then there's catch a break. Jake says one person catches a break and the other doesn't. To catch a break means to get a lucky opportunity. Something goes in your favor by chance. You can also hear people say, I just need a break, meaning the same thing. Waiting for that moment where luck lands on your side.
I also loved let something off the hook. Jake says blaming the individual lets the system off the hook. If you let someone off the hook, you're releasing them from responsibility. It comes from fishing, actually. The fish escapes. You use it when someone avoids consequences they probably should have faced.
And then, pan out. Sophie says, don't beat yourself up if things don't pan out. To pan out means to turn out well, to succeed as expected. It's almost always used in the negative. It didn't pan out, meaning things didn't go as hoped.
And finally, beat yourself up. Not literally, obviously. It means to be overly hard on yourself, to blame yourself excessively when something goes wrong. Don't beat yourself up about it is something you'd say to comfort someone.
Great phrases. So we've got push back on, head start, catch a break, off the hook, pan out, and beat yourself up. Really versatile, really natural.
Okay, 2 down, 1 to go. And I'll be honest, the last one today, it's probably the one that's going to divide the room the most.
All right, last scenario of the day. And this one touches on something that is everywhere right now. Social media, celebrity culture, beauty standards.
We're talking about cosmetic surgery. And the question is it a great tool for self-confidence, or does it actually push beauty standards that most people can never realistically reach?
And look, this is one of those topics where people have really strong feelings. And that's exactly why it makes for such a good conversation to listen to in English. Because strong feelings mean more expressive language.
You're going to hear a lot of nuance here. This isn't just surgery good or surgery bad. It goes deeper than that, into identity, social pressure, personal choice.
There's also some vocabulary that comes up specifically around this topic that you'd genuinely use if this conversation ever came up at a dinner table or with friends. Which, honestly, it probably has.
Pay attention to how they handle a topic that's a little sensitive. How do they soften their language when needed? How do they express a strong opinion without sounding dismissive? That's a skill in English that takes time, and this conversation is a great example of it.
Let's go.
Okay, can I say something that might sound a little controversial?
Always a great way to start.
I think cosmetic surgery gets way more criticism than it deserves. Like, if someone wants to change something about their appearance and it makes them feel better, why is that anyone else's business?
I don't disagree with the personal choice angle. I really don't. But I think you can't just look at it in isolation, because these decisions don't happen in a vacuum. They happen in a world that's constantly telling people, especially women, that they're not enough as they are.
Sure, but that pressure existed long before cosmetic surgery did. People have always felt insecure about how they look. At least now there's an option to do something about it if you want to.
right, but here's where I get a little uneasy. When the option starts looking the same on everyone, like the same nose, the same lips, the same jawline, is that really individual choice anymore? Or are we all just chasing the same template?
That's a fair concern, but I think that says more about trends than about surgery itself. People follow trends in fashion, in haircuts, in everything. That's not unique to cosmetic procedures.
True, but fashion fades. A nose job doesn't. There's a permanence to it that I think deserves more weight in the conversation.
I hear you. And I think there are definitely cases where it goes too far, where someone is clearly trying to fix something emotional with something physical, and that's not going to work. But that's a mental health conversation, not an anti-surgery conversation.
Okay, I think that's an important distinction. I guess my issue isn't really with the surgery itself. It's with the narrative around it. The way it's sold as this quick fix for self-esteem, like you'll finally feel confident once you change this one thing. And then people change that one thing and find another thing they want to change.
The goalpost keeps moving.
Exactly. And I think that's partly because the root issue was never really about the physical feature in the first place.
I think that's true for some people, but I also think some people genuinely have one specific thing that's bothered them their whole life. They fix it and they're done. They move on. They feel better. And I don't think we should project the more complicated cases onto everyone.
No, you're right. I think sometimes I make that mistake, generalizing the extreme cases.
We all do. I think the honest answer is that it depends entirely on the person and their reasons. Surgery isn't the villain. Unchecked beauty standards are.
Okay, I'll take that. I think where I land is the tool isn't the problem. The environment that makes people feel like they need it, that's worth questioning.
Yeah, and maybe instead of shaming people for getting surgery, the energy is better spent pushing back on the standards that made them feel that way in the beginning.
That's a much harder fight, though.
Yeah, nobody said it was going to be easy.
The tool isn't the problem. The environment that makes people feel like they need it is. I mean, Ryan really landed that one.
He did. And what I thought was interesting is how Chloe started pretty critical and kind of talked herself into a more nuanced position by the end. She wasn't defensive about it either. She just said, "You're right. I think I generalize sometimes." That takes a certain honesty.
Which, by the way, is also a great conversational skill. Knowing how to admit you've shifted your position without it feeling like a defeat. Okay, let's break down the language.
First up, in a vacuum. Chloe says these decisions don't happen in a vacuum. This means without any outside context or influence, completely isolated. You'll hear this a lot in serious discussions. You can't look at this in a vacuum means you have to consider the bigger picture.
Then there's get a little uneasy. Chloe uses this to express discomfort without being dramatic about it. It's softer than saying, "This bothers me," or "I hate this." It's a really useful phrase when you want to flag that something doesn't sit right with you, but you're still open to the conversation.
The goalpost keeps moving. This is a great idiom. It means the target or expectation keeps changing, usually in a frustrating way. Just when you think you've reached the goal, it shifts. Originally from sports, but now used in all kinds of contexts, work, relationships, beauty standards apparently.
I also want to highlight project onto someone. Ryan says we shouldn't project the complicated cases onto everyone. To project something onto someone means to assume they share your feelings, fears, or experiences when they might not. It comes up a lot in psychology, but you hear it in everyday conversation too.
And then push back on. We actually saw this one in the last scenario with Sophie, but Ryan uses it differently here. He says the energy is better spent pushing back on the standards. In this context, it means actively challenging or resisting something, not just in a conversation, but in a broader sense. Worth noting that phrasal verb in both uses.
And finally, land, as in, where I land is. Chloe uses it to wrap up her final position. It's a casual, natural way to say, this is my conclusion, or this is where I end up after thinking it through. You can also say where I'm at for a similar effect.
So, in a vacuum, get uneasy, the goalpost keeps moving, project onto someone, push back on, and land. Solid set to add to your vocabulary.
That's 3 conversations, 3 really different topics, and a whole lot of English you can actually use. I'd say that's a pretty good episode.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of the Max and Mia podcast. 3 debates, 6 amazing guests, and honestly, some arguments I'm still thinking about.
Same. The goalpost one is going to stay with me.
If you made it all the way to the end, thank you. Seriously, it means a lot that you spend your time with us.
And if you picked up even 2 or 3 expressions from today, that's a win. Use them. Try them out in a conversation, in a message, wherever. That's how they actually stick.
We'll be back soon with a brand new episode. Until then, keep listening, keep practicing, and don't be too hard on yourself.
Take care, everyone.
Take care, everyone. To keep taking your English to the next level, click on the next video or explore the others we've made for you.